Hey everybody, hope you're doing great. Alex Kirshner here to pick this week of college football bowl games for Odds Checker. We've talked about it before. Betting on college football is hard, even in normal times, even in normal seasons. This year, there's been even more uncertainty than normal, and I think that ratchets up even more in bowl games because you deal with the usual armchair bowl psychologist thing where you're trying to figure out which teams are really going to be invested in these games, which are just kind of showing up and playing out the string. And also, you have a situation this year where I think even more players than normal are not playing in bowl games, who have opted out and kind of changed the composition of their teams. So we're going to be thinking about that in a number of these games. But I want to start in the game where everyone's playing at relatively close to full strength, provided their COVID tests come back the way they want them to. That is the Rose Bowl playoff semifinal, though it's not really the Rose Bowl because it's in North Texas. Playoff semifinal between Alabama and Notre Dame. A lot of people will probably come to this video to see a spread pick in this game. I want to start you off with the total and go under 66.5. I will tell you that I thought about the spread here, and I just couldn't do it with Notre Dame. 19 points is where it is as I record this video. That's a lot. That's the biggest spread in the history of the college football playoff, which is been in existence for 6 years now. It is big enough that I am not quite interested in Alabama. I don't know that I like them to cover 19, but I really just can't do it with Notre Dame. Alabama has covered in, I believe, 7 of its last 8 games. The only one that they didn't cover being the SEC championship win over Florida a week and a half ago. And I don't think Notre Dame has quite the weapons Florida has, which is what has guided me to the under in this game. Notre Dame's offense is not built to rack up tons of points, tons of perimeter vertical passes, the way that Florida's was with Kyle Trask delivering the ball to Kyle Pitts and Kadarius Toney. We saw Bama get sort of exposed in that game, remember, but I don't think that Notre Dame with a more traditional RPO-based, short pass-based offense is going to score anywhere near the 40s against Alabama. If they do, this will be a bad bet and the under will not hit. But I just don't think it's what Notre Dame does. I think that Alabama's defense will look a lot more like the defense it was in the back half of the regular season, starting pretty much with the second half of that game against Georgia, where they completely shut down the Dogs and came back to win that game. I think if Notre Dame gets to 30, that's awesome for them. I think somewhere around 21 is more likely. And if that happens, I think that a mix of the pace of play, neither of these teams really runs at a breakneck pace with tempo, and Notre Dame's offensive shortcomings should make us okay on the under here. Also, keep in mind that if this game is the blowout that a lot of people think it will be, maybe you have a fourth quarter where Nick Saban is more or less just sitting on the game. While we're here, I will say that if this spread goes down from around 19 to maybe 17 where it opened, I would be interested again in Alabama. And if it gets up to like 21 or north of 21, I might have to pull the trigger and bet on Notre Dame. I like to make sure that I'm watching lines throughout the week, and hopefully you can consider this whenever it is that you're putting in your own picks. The Cheez-It Bowl, a slightly less consequential bowl game, but a beautiful one nonetheless between Oklahoma State and Miami. I'm pulling the trigger on Miami plus 2.5 in this game with the Canes as underdogs. I think no doubt that this spread was a hard move in Oklahoma State's direction because of how bad Miami's defense looked in their regular season finale against North Carolina. Probably the worst defensive performance in the history of Miami Hurricanes football. It was really bad, both from a total yards and points perspective. You give up in the 60s. It's not great. It's hard to do, even in college football. Amateur bowl psychology says Miami has given up on the season and may not care a ton about this game, that they lost a chance to play in a New Year's Six Bowl with how badly they played against North Carolina, and so they won't show up. I understand that. And Miami also does not have arguably their 2 best defenders in Jalen Phillips and Quincy Roche, 2 of their most important edge players on that side of the ball, and they've both opted out. They're preparing for the NFL draft. I think I'm okay with all of that, however, and still comfortable getting points with Miami. For one thing, the defense probably improves a lot on the North Carolina game, just on the basis of shoring up some structural deficiencies in that game. They had a ton of busts where they just were not in the right place to contain particularly perimeter runs. I think that some of that gets short up. Manny Diaz is a good defensive coach. He can handle that. Second, Oklahoma State's offense is just not very good. It's been pretty bad all year. This program has shifted identities this year to be a defense-first program. And the running game, even when Chuba Hubbard was playing, Chuba Hubbard, of course, a preseason All-American and one of the best running backs in the country, running game didn't produce this year. It was a bad running game, and now Chuba is opted out for the bowl game along with Phillips on the other side. So I don't think that Oklahoma State is going to suddenly, put up a ton of yards on the ground. I don't like the quarterback situation. I don't think they're going to do it through the air either. And with this game being in Orlando with some fans in attendance, it is more or less a home game for Miami, though obviously parsing the exact advantage to that is tough in 2020. I view this game as close to a toss-up, so I am happy to be getting points on either side of the matchup. And when I put it in, that's 2.5 for Miami. I think anything more than a point on either side, it just feels like good value to me. If Miami gets up to +3, all the better to take the Canes. In the Alamo Bowl, Colorado and Texas, I am taking the over at 63 in this game. Colorado's offense is very plucky. They have shown in a short season a little bit more punch than I think a lot of people thought they would under Carl Durrell this year. Sam Neuer, their new quarterback, is capable of hitting some big pass plays. Jarek Broussard is the featured player on this offense, their running back, and he's had a great abbreviated season. But the biggest reason that I think these guys are going to play fairly well in this game is that Texas's defense is in a bad way as a result of opt-outs. Players who decide not to play, understandably so, in this bowl game. There are 4 defensive captains for Texas, all of them not playing in this game. Joseph Osai, who I think a lot of people would agree has been the best player on their team this year, defensive end, he's gone. Taquan Graham, their defensive tackle, probably their most important run stuffer, he is not playing. Both of their top safeties, Caden Stearns and Chris Brown, are not playing in this game. And I think Brown in particular is a really important coverage player for them. He's been their best coverage guy this year. So that's your best pass rusher, your best run stopper, your 2 starting safeties. Not awesome. I think that completely changes the dynamic for Texas's defense, even as well as they have recruited over the years on that side of the ball. I expect Sam Ehlinger in what could be his last college game, though we'll see, to play well. I don't think he would like to leave it to chance that he goes out on a bad note. And I think Texas's offense can score as well against a Colorado defense that doesn't have a ton of juice. So all of those things to me point to the over, and I feel good about it. I want to finish with 2 picks in the Armed Forces Bowl, though it does not include any Armed Forces this year, between Tulsa and Mississippi State. I'm going to take Mississippi State on the money line. I found that at +115. See what number you can get. And I am taking the over at 48 in this game. Betting on Mississippi State and betting on Mississippi State to score sort of goes against how I view that team this year. I think their offense has been very bad. It is as upsetting a year for the air raid offense as we've seen in a while. And I also think pretty highly of Tulsa. But this is another one where an opt-out plays a huge role. Zaven Collins, the Nagurski Award winner for Tulsa as the best defensive player in college football, their all-important linebacker, opted out of this game. He is preparing for the NFL draft. I'm not sure if he's the best defensive player in college football, but he is pretty close, and he's got the award, so I don't think he really cares what I have to say about it. And he's awesome. I mean, he is so important for that Tulsa defense. He has been such a big reason why they have had the season they've had. He is one of the main sources of their pass rush. He is an important run stopper for them. And also, despite being a linebacker, and this is really important against an air raid team like Mississippi State, he is their highest graded coverage player by Pro Football Focus this year. 4 interceptions, the lowest passer rating when targeted of any player on that defense. I add to that the Mississippi State's offense has shown a few signs of life in the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. They are a little better than the terrible unit they were for just about the entire first half of the season, save for a blowout of LSU. I think that they've put a few things together since Will Rogers has come in at quarterback. And I think they should, they can't be at less strength than they were when they played with 40-something scholarship players in a couple games toward the end of the year. So I feel good about Mississippi State's ability to score against a Tulsa defense that is missing maybe the most important individual defensive player in all of college football. And I think that they are going to win in a kind of a non-upset upset. I think a lot of people would consider any SEC team against an AAC team and have a hard time seeing why the non-power team would win. I think Tulsa understandably has become the favorite in this game, but I think there is good value with Mississippi State on the money line. So that's it for me. Hope you have a wonderful start to your new year and enjoy this weekend of bowl games, and hopefully we can make a little money together as well.